The Crossing Keeper, Part 1, Segment 1. The notice came on a Wednesday, the kind of morning where Glasgow rain feels like static, thin, cold, and constant. I'd stopped checking my phone weeks ago, so I didn't see the final eviction warning until the envelope turned to pulp on the floor. Final notice, 14 days. 14 days. After that, the bank would reclaim the flat, and I'd be another ghost in the city's long corridor of failures. My company, Caldwell Demolition, had gone under that spring. The contracts dried up, safety fines stacked, and I'd lost my last tender to a cheaper outfit from Sterling. My crew scattered. The silence that followed was worse than death. It was absence, of purpose, of noise, of comradeship. Hellman had taught me how to survive with little more than a shovel and sandbags, but civilian life was a different kind of battlefield. You can't shoot interest rates or file appeals against loneliness. I was halfway through a bottle of Tesco whiskey when I found the ad. Warden needed, A835 toll crossing, Highland route. £28 per hour plus accommodation. Night shifts only. Immediate start. No questions. No company name. No HR signature. Just a number. I called out of sheer desperation, expecting a scam. Instead, a clipped Highland voice answered. Caldwell. Royal Engineer, I froze. Who told you that? The line clicked, not a hang-up, but a decision. Report to Ullapool by dusk Friday. Malcolm will brief you. Bring warm clothes. Then silence. No interview. No contract. Just a summons. By Friday, I was halfway up the A9 in my old transit van, a mattress tied in the back and every penny I had left in fuel. The sky darkened the farther north I went. The Highlands didn't feel like part of Britain anymore. The hills rose like ribs, the roads coiling through them like veins. Somewhere past Inverness, I lost signal. No radio, no GPS, just the hum of tires and the smell of wet heather. The A835 narrowed until it felt like driving down the spine of the earth. I passed a sign half swallowed by moss. Toll crossing, 2 miles. Keep lights dim. I laughed under my breath. Some local prank, surely. Then the fog rolled in. Dense, fast, alive. My van headlights cut through it for maybe 10 feet before the beam fractured into colors, green, gold, red, like oil in water. When the road finally widened, I saw it. A squat concrete booth on a raised embankment, half buried in peat. A red and white barrier arm crossed the single lane. Beside it, a phone box, shattered glass, rusted door. The whole place looked like the 1970s had been preserved under formaldehyde. A man stood by the booth, shoulders hunched against the wind, cigarette burning bright as a signal flare. He didn't wave as I parked. He just stared. Malcolm Reed? The man nodded once. Up close, he looked half dead. Thin as a fence post, with yellow fingers and a face that seemed smoked like meat. You Caldwell? His voice rasped through phlegm. Yeah. Got the call. He flicked ash, never looking me in the eye. They always call. He opened the booth door, and the smell hit me, stale coffee, damp concrete, a faint iron tang. Inside was a desk, a chair, a flickering lamp, and an ancient cash register bolted to the counter. Behind the glass window sat a toll lever connected to the barrier. Outside. Malcolm reached under the desk, retrieved something wrapped in oilcloth, and shoved it into my hands. Heavy. Leather-bound. Stained. The journal, he said flatly. 9 rules. Don't test them. Don't ask. I flipped it open. The first page was written in shaky ink, dated 1912. The next, 1974. Then 2003. Different hands, same warning. The road hungers. The keeper feeds it. I looked up, trying to laugh. So this is like hazing the new guy, Spooky stories for the tourist. Malcolm's eyes didn't blink. They smell fresh meat. Break a rule, and the road claims you. He stepped back into the mist without another word. I shouted after him, but the fog swallowed the sound. When I followed, there was no trace, not footprints, not tire tracks. Only a faint smell of tobacco lingering like ghost breath. I sat in the booth, watching the rain streak down the glass. Midnight approached. My shift clocked in on the old punch card taped to the wall, midnight to 6 o'clock. The heater wheezed to life, spitting rust. Outside, the barrier arm creaked in the wind. The journal sat on my lap. The rules were scrawled in no particular order. Never leave the booth after midnight. If the phone rings, answer only on the third chime. Do not make eye contact with the red deer. No tolls after 3 a.m. Always lock the booth when fog thickens. The gramophone must play at 3:33. Do not accept paper money. Do not clean the blood under the register. Blood seals the pact. Some were inked in brown, others etched deep into the leather itself, as though branded. I poured a cup of instant coffee, trying to convince myself it was an elaborate prank. The wind outside whistled through the standing stones that ringed the crossing. I hadn't noticed them before. 4 of them, arranged like a crooked compass. At 11:53, headlights glowed faintly through the fog. A Land Rover, or what was left of one. Rusted, headless, no driver. Yet it rolled to a perfect stop at the barrier. The toll light flickered green. The barrier lifted on its own. I sat frozen. The Land Rover glided through, tires whispering over wet tarmac. I saw everything, every dent. Every number plate digit, despite its headlights being out. When it vanished into the fog, I was shaking. Then the phone rang. A dusty rotary phone bolted to the wall, long disconnected. It rang once. Twice. Thrice. My hand hovered before picking it up. Hello. Static. Then, a child's voice, faint and wet. Mister, can you tell me the way to the hollow glen? Every muscle in my body seized. My mouth moved on instinct. You've got the wrong. The line clicked. A scraping sound filled the booth. From the phone box outside came movement. Long, thin shapes pressed against the glass, figures. Too tall, too still. Fingers raking across the walls like claws peeling bark. I shut off the light. Locked the booth. Sat in silence while the scratching continued. By 3 a.m. it stopped. The fog rolled away as if exhaling. When dawn came, I opened the booth door. The phone box stood empty, but its glass was gouged in spirals. In the mud beneath it, 3 lines of footprints that stopped halfway across the road. The sun cut through the clouds, pale and cold. I laughed shakily, convincing myself it was exhaustion. Hallucination. Nothing more. Then I looked back at the toll register. A single coin sat on the counter, thick, silver, old. Viking markings carved along the rim. It was warm to the touch. Segment 2. The next night I told myself I'd imagined everything. The fog, the Land Rover, the voice. Sleep deprivation, whiskey ghosts, soldiers' nerves. I'd read enough case studies to know how isolation bends the mind. But by sundown, I was back behind the wheel of my van, driving toward the crossing. Something between obligation and guilt pulled me. The company hadn't sent me a contract, but a week's wages had already been transferred into my account. £1,176. The note in the memo field read, "For keeping the road." It didn't say which road. The booth looked smaller in daylight. The barrier arm drooped like a tired limb. The peat bog shimmered in the wind, giving the illusion of slow breathing. I found a kettle, a cracked mirror, and the gramophone Malcolm had mentioned, an old brass horn attached to a wooden base. Someone had left a 78 revolutions per minute record inside, the label too faded to read. By 11, the cold had become bone deep. The heater barely worked. I kept my boots on and my torch ready. I decided to test one of the rules, not out of bravery, but stupidity. Rule number 5, always lock the booth when fog thickens. At 11:48, the first wisps came creeping from the tree-line. I didn't lock the door. Instead, I stepped outside. The fog moved unnaturally, in slow, pulsing rhythms. My breath froze in front of me. Every sound, the creak of my boots, the drip of condensation, seemed amplified tenfold. Then came the eyes. Dozens of them, low to the ground, glowing red through the mist. They didn't blink. They didn't move. Just stared from the peat bog like coals waiting to reignite. Stags, I thought. Red deer, curious about the lights. But when I shone my torch, they didn't scatter. They only turned their heads in unison, following the beam with slow, human precision. Something primal in me broke. I stumbled back into the booth and slammed the door. The lock clicked by itself. For hours, I heard movement outside, hooves that didn't sound like hooves, the scrape of antlers against the window, a low breathing that almost matched mine. At 3:33, the gramophone started spinning on its own. The needle dropped with a hiss. A Gaelic lament whispered through the static. The melody was haunting, soft, sorrowful, older than any recording had a right to be. The red eyes outside swayed to it, almost bowing. I could see them through the frosted glass, rows of silhouettes shifting like dancers. Then the record skipped. The note stuttered, cracked, and something screamed from the trees. It wasn't animal. It wasn't human either. It was a sound that bent the air. The deer heads snapped toward the booth, and their bodies began to rise. That was when I saw them clearly for the first time. Not deer at all, but human torsos with antlers sprouting from skulls, limbs fused and blackened like charcoal. The red glow came not from eyes but from gaping holes where eyes should be. They circled the booth. Their mouths opened and closed soundlessly. I jammed my palm against the gramophone, trying to steady the needle. The record caught the next note, the music resumed. One by one, the figures froze, then collapsed into mist, dissolving into the ground. When silence returned, I realized I was bleeding. A thin cut across my hand from the brass edge of the gramophone horn. Blood on the vinyl. Rule number 9 echoed in my mind, blood seals the pact. At dawn, the barrier arm was upright, and the booth window was covered in hoof-shaped prints. In the road, embedded in the frost, lay coins. Dozens of them. Some rusted, some gleaming. Each one stamped with the same symbol, a cross split by a line of waves. I pocketed one. The moment I did, the air seemed to shift. A single crow perched on the barrier and watched me until I left. That evening, I drove into Ullapool to clear my head. The nearest pub was called the Scaffin Inn. Inside, fishermen nursed pints under deer heads mounted on the walls. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I mentioned the toll crossing, the room went still. One old man muttered something in Gaelic. The bartender, a gray-haired woman with tattooed wrists, leaned in. "You took the keeper's post." I nodded carefully. Her expression didn't soften. Malcolm lasted 14 months. Before him, Callum McRae lasted 6. Before that, she shook her head. No one remembers the first. I asked what the road was. The A835, she said, isn't a road. It's a threshold. It crosses the old lines. The places where the dead still walk. Her name was Morag McRae. I'd later learn she was more than a bartender, a folklorist, maybe even a witch. That night, she slipped a small pouch into my pocket. For the ones who linger, she said. Rowan ash and salt. Don't let the fog in. Back at the crossing, I checked the journal again. Someone had scrawled a note beside rule number 4, no tolls. After 3 a.m. After 3, the road belongs to them. If they pay, take nothing. I thought I understood, until the third night. At exactly 3:01, I heard an engine approach. An old Bedford lorry rolled out of the fog, headlights dark, engine silent. The driver was a woman, pale as frost, hair bound in a tattered Arised shawl. Her lips were sewn shut with copper wire. She pressed something against the glass. A handful of black coins, slick with blood. I didn't move. Didn't reach. Then the gramophone began spinning again, unprompted. The record played the same. Lament. The woman tilted her head, listening. Her lips trembled against the stitches. The copper threads moved, tightening and loosening like living worms. She pressed her forehead against the glass, leaving a faint bloody smear. I couldn't look away. Her eyes were bottomless, not angry, just infinitely sad. When the song ended, she smiled without opening her mouth. The lorry rolled backward into the mist and vanished. I sat in darkness for a long time, hands trembling, until I noticed the journal had changed. A new line had been written under rule number 9. Fresh ink, still wet. The blood remembers kindness. I slept in the booth the next morning, exhausted. When I woke, the barrier was half lowered. Something scratched at the outer wall. A message carved in the concrete, shallow and jagged. Keeper. They will test you next. Segment 3. The third night began like the others, with fog. It arrived earlier this time, rolling down from the hills in slow, deliberate waves. The tree line vanished. Even the standing stones disappeared, their silhouettes swallowed whole. I could see only the booth's reflection in the window, and my own face staring back. Pale and hollow. The clock read 11:42 p.m. I'd memorized the rules now, not out of faith, but fear. Every word of that cursed journal felt like a heartbeat under my palm. Still, something gnawed at me. The warning carved into the wall, they will test you next. I kept replaying it in my head. I checked the barrier outside. The fog distorted the beam of my flashlight, bending it like glass. Somewhere in the distance, something moved. Not footsteps, something heavier. Like weight dragging through peat. At midnight, the booth phone rang. Once. Twice. Thrice. My hand hovered, trembling. I answered. Static again, but beneath it, breathing. Mister, are you still keeping the road? The same child's voice asked. My throat went dry. Yes. A pause. Then, softly. They're coming for. What's owed? The line went dead. Outside, the barrier arm rose slowly on its own. The old mechanism creaked, motor humming faintly. The fog pulsed with color, green, red, violet. And then the stags returned. They emerged from the mist in a wide circle, 12 of them this time, larger, antlers tangled with torn cloth and seaweed. Their hides were split by black fissures, glowing faintly from within. Their breath steamed like smoke. One stepped forward, hooves sinking into the wet road, and turned its head toward me. In the hollow where its eyes should have been, something moved, like hands pressing against the inside of a mask. I backed into the booth. The barrier light blinked red. Then headlights cut through the fog. A car, a modern one, silver. 2 passengers inside. Tourists, maybe. They slowed, confused by the barrier and the shapes in the road. I waved frantically through the window, shouting for them to turn around. They couldn't hear me. The woman in the passenger seat lowered her window. That was when the stags moved. They turned, almost in unison, toward the car. Their necks cracked, vertebrae snapping like dry twigs. The fog thickened, swallowing the headlights. I heard screams, muffled, distant, and then nothing. When the mist cleared, the car was gone. Only the barrier arm remained, dripping something black. Rule number 4 flashed in my mind: no tolls after 3 a.m. I checked the clock. 2:57. The barrier began to rise again, even though no vehicle approached. The register drawer slid open by itself. Coins clattered inside, silver, gold, and something that looked disturbingly like teeth. Then, from the tree lean, came a low sound. A horn, deep and resonant, like a ship's foghorn played. Backward. The stags turned their heads toward it and began moving closer to the booth, hooves striking sparks from the road. I slammed the register shut and locked the door. The window rattled under. The pressure of wind, or breath. The whole booth seemed to inhale. At 3 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, I didn't answer. A voice still came through, without the receiver lifted. You took the blood coin, keeper. Now the gate opens. The gramophone needle lifted on its own and dropped with a screech. The same Gaelic lament started, skipping every few seconds. The glass fogged over. A woman's silhouette pressed against it from the outside, the woman in the Ari said. Her mouth still sewn with copper wire, but this time, the stitches moved like muscles. Pulling tight, then slack, as if alive. Her hands slammed against the glass, again and again, hard enough to crack it. I could hear the copper threads tearing through her flesh. The clock struck 3:33. The gramophone needle jumped. The song stuttered. The woman screamed, a wet, backward howl that made my eardrums vibrate. Threads ripped. Her mouth opened. The copper wires slithered down her chin like worms. Blood ran black under the booth light. She spoke, not with sound, but through the vibration of the walls. Rule broken. The road remembers. Every light in the booth exploded. The heater went dead. The barrier snapped upright. The stags began to run, not toward me, but in circles, faster and faster, hooves striking the ground in a rhythm that sounded like chanting. Outside, the fog rose higher, forming walls. Faces appeared within it, hundreds, maybe thousands. Some human, some not. Twisted mouths whispering in unison. Blood seals the pact. I grabbed the journal, desperate. My palm still bore the small cut from the gramophone horn. The page beneath rule number 9 was blank, but I knew what it wanted. I took my knife and dragged the blade across my palm, deep this time. Blood dripped onto the leather. The booth shuddered violently. The fog screamed. The standing stones flared with green fire. The woman outside clutched her face. Eyes rolling white as threads burst from her mouth, writhing like serpents. The stags fell, one by one, bursting into ash. The ground split beneath the road, revealing veins of red light that pulsed like arteries. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. Then silence. Just the sound of my blood dripping onto the floor. When I opened my eyes, it was dawn. The booth stood silent. The barrier frozen mid-lift. The air smelled of iron and ozone. In the middle of the road, the standing stones now glowed faintly, carved with fresh lines, the same cross-and-wave sigil from the coins. On the booth counter, the journal lay open. A new entry had burned itself into the final page. The keeper bleeds, the road sleeps. For now. Below it, written in fresh ink. Another hand, not mine. Seek Morag McCrae. The Vale watch begins. I stumbled outside. The fog had receded all the way to the loch. The peatland shimmered with frost and faint streaks of green. Flame, fading as the sun rose. I half expected the booth to vanish when I turned my back. It didn't, not yet. But something told me the crossing wasn't a place anymore. It was awake. I got in my van and drove south. The radio, long dead, flickered with static for the first time in weeks. A voice, faint, almost kind, whispered through the speaker. Blood remembers kindness. I didn't look back. Not once. Part 2, Segment 1. By the time I reached Ullapool, the sun had already broken over the loch, staining the water gold. It should have been beautiful, but after 3 nights on the A835, every ripple looked like something breathing just beneath the surface. I hadn't slept. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Every sound, the cry of gulls, the thud of tires on tarmac, felt like it carried intention. The road had infected me. I could still feel its hum beneath the soles of my boots. I parked outside the Scathan Inn. The same pub where Morag had given me the pouch of rowan ash. And salt. The bag was still in my coat pocket. It had grown warm. Inside, the bar was quiet, save for the low crackle of a wood stove. Morag was there, polishing glasses, her eyes flicking up as if she'd been waiting. You came back, she said. Something happened. I told her everything, the fog, the voice, the woman with her mouth sewn shut. The blood ritual. The message in the journal. Morag listened without interrupting, her hands moving rhythmically, methodically, as if scrubbing the story itself clean. When I finished, she poured 2 whiskeys and sat across from me. The road's woken again, she said. And it's chosen you. I wanted to laugh. Chosen? I nearly died out there. She nodded slowly. That's how it starts. The A835 isn't a road, Ethan. It's a line, one of the old ones. They called them Leak Shabhaid, the stone veins. Places where the living and the dead share the same breath. She reached into her apron and drew a folded map. An old ordnance survey, yellowed and creased. Circles were drawn in red ink all along the Highland coast. Every crossing like yours sits on one. Every one needs a keeper. We drove out to her home. That afternoon, a cottage perched on the cliff edge above Loch Broom. Inside, the air smelled of peat smoke, salt, and rosemary. Shelves overflowed with books, folklore, Gaelic dictionaries, church records. A wall of photographs caught my attention. Men and women standing before toll booths, years apart, same dead look in their eyes. The keepers, Morag said, noticing me looking. Each bound by blood. Each swallowed by the road when their time came. Then why keep replacing them? I asked. Because if the road's not fed, she said, it eats everything else. She opened my journal, the one Malcolm had given me, and laid it beside another. The second was older, bound in hide that looked almost translucent. Its first page read. To hold the line. The keeper must bleed, but not die. Morag pointed to the symbols carved into the leather. Clan pact, she explained. Centuries ago, when the unseelie courts still walked openly, the McCraes, the Kerrs, and the Reeds bound the A835 as a threshold. Bloodlines linked to bloodlines. That's how the barrier stands. Reed, I said quietly. Malcolm Reed. She nodded. Last of his name. A chill crept through me. And mine. Caldwell, she murmured, tracing her finger along a faded sigil. Anglicized from MacCalduin. Builders. Bridgemakers. You were born to this. Whether you knew it or not. For the first time, I felt the pull not just in fear but in something older, a resonance in my blood. But the rational part of me fought back. You're saying the entire bloody Highlands depend on one man in a toll booth with a gramophone and a rulebook? Morag didn't smile. Until the ley lines shift. Until the court wakes. Then it takes more than one. She crossed to a locked chest and pulled out a small wooden cross, carved of rowan and bound with silver wire. The first keeper used this to mark the gate. You'll need help to keep it closed now. At dusk, she took me down to the harbor. The tide was low, and a figure leaned against a battered Land Rover Defender, smoking. Broad shoulders. Close-cropped hair. Face cut from stone. Sergeant Lachlan Kerr, Morag said. He's been watching the crossings up north. Knows the terrain. Kerr offered a gloved hand. His grip was iron. Heard about your first siege, he said. Messy work. I didn't exactly volunteer. No one does, he said. But once the road marks you, you're never clear of it. He opened the back of his vehicle. Inside sat a series of canisters. Silver crosses welded to their tops, hoses snaking from them into the engine. Holy water cooling system, Kerr said. Keeps the landy from stalling when the fog's thick. Learned the hard way after. A banshee tried to chew, she said. Keep it close. They read the old journals, too. Learn your handwriting, your voice. Best not to give them everything. I flipped through it. The first page already had something. Written, though the ink wasn't mine. Midnight comes quicker the second week. Did you? She shook her head. Not me. The sea wind hissed through the grass like whispers. We gathered that night in Morag's cottage, me, her, and Kerr, sitting around a table covered in maps and candles. She called us the Vale Watch. The keepers used to work alone, she explained. But the crossings are thinning. The roads shift. The court grows hungry. We need eyes and hands, and hearts strong enough to face what's behind the veil. I wanted to protest, to say I wasn't that man, but Kerr beat me to it. He's already bled for the gate, he said. That's enough. I looked down at the cut on my palm. It hadn't closed properly. The skin pulsed faintly, as if the wound had a heartbeat of its own. Morag placed a vial beside it, a small glass ampoule filled with silvery liquid. Distilled rowan ash and consecrated salt, she said. For the night they test you again. I stayed in her guest room that night, listening to the sea crash against the rocks. At 3:33 a.m., I woke to the faint sound of a gramophone playing somewhere outside. I looked through the window. The fog had returned, just a thread of it, snaking up the hill toward the cottage. In the mist stood a figure, Malcolm Reed. He raised a hand, palm sliced, blood dripping into the soil. His mouth opened, words I couldn't hear. Then he vanished. When I looked down, the journal on my bedside table had opened itself to a fresh page. A single line burned into it, glowing faint red in the dark. If you answer the call again, you answer forever. Segment 2. The first patrol began under a bruised sky, a highland dusk that never quite turned dark, just thicker, heavier. As if the night were waiting for permission. Kerr drove, the Land Rover groaning up the single-track road toward the moors north of Loch Broom. Morag sat beside him, murmuring Gaelic under her breath, her fingers worrying a string of rowan beads. I rode in the back, journal in hand, trying to keep my nerves from boiling over. We passed the last human light a few miles back, a crofter's cottage, window glowing amber through the mist. After that, only emptiness. The radio on the dash crackled every few minutes with bursts of static that sometimes shaped themselves into words. Kerr didn't react. "Always happens out here," he said. The road listens. Our destination was a second crossing, smaller than mine, older. Locals called it the Drowned Turnpike. The bridge spanned a gorge choked with ferns and dark water, built from stones slick with moss and lichen. The air smelled of brine though the sea was 10 miles off. Kerr parked near the sign, a rusted iron plate. That read A835 AUX, closed after midnight in faint letters. "Never was a road here," he muttered. "Just keeps showing up on maps." We set up the way Morag instructed, salt lines across the road. Rowan branches in the gaps, mirrors angled toward the bridge to confuse the reflection. She claimed reflections were gateways, they come through the version of you that blinks first. I tried to focus on the work, but the longer we stayed, the more the night pressed in. Sound changed. The wind no longer rustled the grass but whispered through it, syllables I almost recognized. Morag looked up sharply. "Do you hear them?" I nodded. "Voices." "They're not outside," she said. "They're under." The ground trembled. Not an earthquake, a pulse. The earth breathed. Kerr switched off the Land Rover's lights. The darkness that followed wasn't natural, it had weight, texture, like ink mixed with glass. In that lightless stretch, shapes began to move along the bridge, silhouettes walking in silence, each carrying something, a lantern, a bundle, a body. They crossed one by one, feet never quite touching the stone. When they reached the far side, they dissolved into mist. "Echoes," Morag whispered. "The ones who never made it home." But one figure didn't dissolve. It stopped halfway, head turning toward us. Even through the distance, I saw its eyes, pale and unfocused, like marble submerged in milk. "Keeper," it said, in a voice like wet paper tearing. Kerr raised his rifle instinctively, though the bullets were blessed. "Not meant to kill." "We're seen," he hissed. Morag began chanting, low, rhythmic, in Gaelic so old I barely recognized it. She scattered salt toward the bridge, the grains catching faint blue light. The figure stepped closer. Water dripped from its sleeves. Its face shifted, Malcolm Reed's for a heartbeat, then mine. "Rule 2, I muttered. "Answer only on the third chime." But there was no phone this time. Only the tolling of something deep, a bell, or maybe a heartbeat, pulsing from beneath the bridge. The third toll came. The figure froze. Then it smiled, wide, too wide, and fell backward into the dark water below. The echo that followed wasn't a splash. It was applause. We drove hard after that, up the road toward Inverpolly. Fog chased us like surf. Kerr gunned the engine, the Defender's tires slipping on wet gravel. "Something followed," he said. "I can feel it on the mirrors." I turned. In the rear window, shadows ran parallel to us, keeping pace. Long arms brushed the heather, dragging behind them strips of fabric that hissed across the asphalt. No faces, just hollows filled with red mist. Morag leaned out the window, flinging salt in arcs. "That burned green when they hit the air. They can't overtake us if they can't name us," she shouted. "What does that mean?" I yelled over the wind. "They steal your reflection to learn your name." My throat went dry. The side mirror flickered, for an instant, the reflection wasn't mine but someone older, burned, smiling. Kerr ripped the mirror off and threw it into the ditch. The moment it left the vehicle, the fog behind us broke apart, scattering like torn fabric. We reached Ullapool just before dawn. The sea was calm, too calm. No wind, no gulls. The town slept as though something had pressed pause. We parked outside Morag's house. Kerr killed the engine and leaned on the steering wheel, his breathing rough. "She's right," he said. "The ley lines are bleeding. The bridges are waking." "Bridges?" I asked. "Every crossing point, road, pier, mountain pass. Each is a doorway. When one weakens, the others strain." Morag poured whiskey into 3 glasses. "You sealed one," she told me. "But sealing attracts notice. The court sees a new keeper, and it hungers." I remembered the child's voice on the phone. "They're coming for what's owed." "What do they want?" I asked. Morag looked at me as if she pitied the question. "What they always want, Ethan. Passage." The next night, I returned to my own booth. Kerr insisted on escorting me. In the Land Rover, his headlights dimmed to a dull glow. The crossing looked unchanged, the barrier upright, the stones still pulsing faintly with residual energy from the blood ritual. Morag had given me a talisman to hang inside, a small disc of obsidian etched with the sigil of the Rowan. "To mask your scent," she'd said. "They smell blood through time." I hung it by the window. The air felt heavier. The booth hummed underfoot, like standing on the lid of a drum. I could feel the road beneath, stretching, straining, almost alive. At midnight, the first toll light blinked. Kerr gripped his rifle. "You expecting someone?" "No." The register clattered open. No coins. Just a strip of parchment, wet and curling. Written in black ink. "The Vale watch is seen. The hunt rides before the week's end." I met Kerr's eyes. "The hunt?" He didn't answer right away. He looked toward the tree line, where fog began to gather again, thicker than before. "The unseelie hunt," he said finally. "The oldest rule breakers of them all." That night, none of us slept. The gramophone began to play again at 3:33, but this time, not the same lament. A faster rhythm. Something like hoofbeats, layered under the tune. And somewhere beyond the glass, in the black line of the road, faint red lights began to move, not headlights, but eyes. Dozens. They were running. Segment 3. It began 3 nights later, when the wind changed. The locals said they could smell iron in the rain, but it wasn't rain, it was something older. A taste like pennies and peat and lightning about to strike. Morag knew before any of us. She stood on her porch at dusk, eyes fixed north, the wind tangling her gray hair. "They're riding," she said quietly. "The hunt's on the move." Kerr didn't ask who they were. He'd fought wars, he knew the look of incoming fire. We gathered at my booth, our makeshift command post, just as the sun sank behind the hills. The fog was already rolling in, thick and unnatural, glowing faintly from within. The stones pulsed a deeper green now, heartbeat fast. The barrier arm rattled without wind. Morag sat down. 3 talismans on the counter, small stones carved with spirals, slick with dew. They track by sound, not sight. The hunt hears fear. Kerr chambered a round into his rifle. The bullet's tip shimmered faintly, silver cross carved into its base. "And if they see us anyway?" he asked. Morag didn't answer. She was listening, not to us, but to the air. It started as thunder. Then it became rhythm. Hoofbeats. Dozens, then hundreds. The fog turned black, churning like storm clouds spun too low. From its depths came movement, stags again, but these were nothing like before. Their antlers burned like torches, and from each neck hung something human, faces, still whispering. Kerr flicked on the defender's floodlights. The beam cut through just enough mist to reveal a line stretching across the moor, riders on skeletal horses, cloaked in shadows that moved independently from their bodies. The hunt. They didn't ride on the ground. They rode through it. Hooves breaking surface tension like stones skipping water. The air tore around them. At their head rode a woman whose face flickered between forms, young, old, pale, burned, beautiful. Monstrous, shifting with every breath. Her eyes were hollow lanterns of gold. Morag whispered one word, voice trembling. Nick Nevin. Kerr raised the rifle. Targets. Don't shoot unless she crosses the barrier. Morag hissed. But the barrier arm snapped upright before she finished. The woman laughed, a sound like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Keeper, she called, her voice echoing. Inside my skull. You bleed well. Shall we see if you bleed true? The wind howled, carrying with it the screams of things unseen. The phone in the booth rang. I froze. Rule number 2. 3 rings. Then answer. Never before. Never after. It rang once. Twice. The hunt stopped moving, hooves stilling midair. Waiting. On the 3rd ring, I grabbed the receiver. This is the crossing, I said. The voice that answered wasn't human. Blood paid. Gate open. The line went dead. The barrier fell, snapping down with a clang that shook the booth. The hunt surged forward. Kerr opened fire. The silver bullets cracked like lightning, bursting in flashes that lit up the fog. Where they hit, the riders screamed and collapsed into vapor. But for every one that fell, 2 more took its place. Morag stood in the road, arms raised, chanting in Gaelic. Her shadow split into 3, each moving differently. They began laying salt lines on their own, looping and twisting in patterns that shimmered with faint blue light. I tried to help, dragging the Rowan cross from the wall, planting it in the center of the road. It burned hot against my palms. The air pulsed, then stilled. For a heartbeat, the hunt faltered. Then Nick Nevin raised her hand. The Rowan burst into flame. The ground opened beneath us, swallowing the salt lines whole. Kerr cursed, reloading with trembling hands. His rifle jammed. Morag, he shouted. They're flanking. But she wasn't listening. Her eyes rolled white, her voice rising in a scream that wasn't entirely hers. The IAD ends in fuel. Agad, she cried, they are in your blood. And then she turned to me. Ethan, the pact. The 9th rule. I opened the journal. The pages fluttered on their own, stopping at the one burned by my blood. Blood seals the pact. But only once. Then what? Her gaze softened. Now it needs more than yours. Before I could stop her, Morag sliced her palm and pressed it to the burning cross. The light flared white, brighter than the moon. The hunt screamed, not in pain, but in fury. Their leader dismounted, striding forward through the inferno, her form solidifying, pale, regal. Her face stitched with lines of gold. She reached out, her hand passing through the flames as if they bent around her. Another keeper dies, she said softly. The road thins. She reached for me. Kerr rammed the defender into gear and gunned it forward, straight into her. The Land Rover roared through the flames, its headlights blazing in the shape of a cross. Nick Nevin vanished in a burst of red mist, shrieking like torn metal. The remaining riders scattered, dissolving into vapor that spiraled upward into the clouds. When the light dimmed, the moor was silent again. The air smelled of burnt salt and wet iron. Morag lay on the ground, breathing shallowly. The wound on her hand had blackened, veins spidering up her arm. "Don't touch me," she whispered when I reached for her. "It's inside the blood now. You'll carry enough of it soon." Kerr knelt beside her, jaw clenched. "We need a medic." "No," she said. "You need a priest." We burned what was left of the cross and buried the ashes at dawn. Kerr and I said nothing on the drive back to Ullapool. The fog had retreated, leaving behind an uncanny stillness. When we reached Morag's cottage, she refused to go inside. Instead, she stared at the horizon, where a new line of standing stones glimmered faintly in the distance, ones we hadn't seen before. "The road's changing course," she said. "You've bought us time, but it's moving inland now." "Toward what?" I asked. She looked at me, her pupils pale and faintly glowing. "Toward you." That night, I couldn't sleep. The gramophone played by itself again, but not from the booth, from the shore. I followed the sound down to the lock. On the water's surface floated my reflection, clear as glass. But it blinked a second too late. And when it smiled, blood trickled from the corners of its mouth. Part 3, Segment 1. I didn't dream after the hunt. I remembered. Every time I closed my eyes, the road unrolled beneath me like a tongue. I could feel its texture, rough tar, cold mist. Veins of glowing green running under the surface like arteries. I wasn't walking on it anymore. I was walking through it. When I woke, dawn light bled through the curtains of Morag's cottage. The gramophone downstairs was spinning again, though the record had long since cracked. Its needle scraped endlessly, whispering fragments of a tune I almost recognized. Kerr sat in the kitchen, cleaning his rifle by lamplight. He looked up as I came down the stairs. His expression told me everything. He hadn't slept either. "She's worse," he said. Morag lay on the couch beneath a pile of wool blankets. Her skin had gone translucent, veins mapped in black. The wound on her hand had stopped bleeding, but the flesh around it pulsed faintly, as if something underneath was breathing. She opened her eyes. "You hear it too, don't you? The music?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. The road." We drove to the crossing that afternoon. Fog clung to the moor, but sunlight tried to pierce through, long fingers of pale gold cutting across the heather. For a moment, the highlands looked almost peaceful. Almost. As we approached, I saw that the standing stones had changed. They were taller now, some leaning inward, forming a rough circle around the booth. New carvings, spirals, waves, and a symbol like an eye, glistened faintly with moisture that wasn't rain. The booth itself hummed like a generator. The barrier light flashed in irregular pulses, red-red-green, red-green-green, as if trying to form a language. Kerr frowned. "I shut this power off days ago." The journal on my dashboard flipped open on its own. The pages fluttered, then stilled. When the barrier breathes, the keeper wakes. I felt something twist deep in my chest, not pain. Not quite. A pull, like gravity shifting direction. Morag clutched her arm. "It's feeding through you now. The ley line's adapting. Can we stop it?" Her eyes were glassy. "No, Ethan. But you can learn its language." At noon, we ran a diagnostic on the generator. Nothing mechanical explained the lights. Kerr walked the perimeter with his rifle, scanning the fog. "Tracks," he called. "Something big. Hooves." I joined him. The prints led from the tree lean to the booth, then vanished mid-stride. Steam still rose from them. Inside each depression shimmered faint green. Light, the same hue as the stones. Not stags, Kerr muttered. Too deep. Too deliberate. He crouched, touching the edge of one. The soil pulsed under his hand. Feels warm. I knelt beside him, placing my palm over the print. The warmth spread into my skin, crawling up my arm, wrapping around my ribs like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. When I pulled my hand away, a symbol had burned itself into my palm, the same spiral N wave from the stones. Morag's voice cut through the fog. Ethan. I turned. She was standing at the booth door, trembling. Don't touch the marks. There. Too late. The barrier arm slammed down. The light turned solid red. The sound that followed wasn't thunder. It was breathing. The entire moor exhaled, wind roaring outward in every direction. The fog pulled back like water in reverse, revealing something beneath it, a network of glowing lines stretching across the peat, forming a vast pattern that disappeared into the horizon. The ley line, Morag whispered. It's showing itself. Kerr lifted his binoculars. It's moving. Christ, it's moving. He was right. The glowing lines weren't fixed, they were pulsing. Inching southward like veins crawling under skin. Toward the village. Toward us. Morag began reciting in Gaelic, voice hoarse but steady. Naam and Talam, Seengale and Rathad. Sanctify the ground, bind the road. I tried to help her, but my voice cracked. I couldn't breathe properly, the hum inside my chest was too strong. The symbol on my hand burned brighter with every heartbeat. Ethan, she said. It's inside you now. You need to tell it to stop. How the hell do I tell a road anything? Not with words. With will. I didn't understand, but something in me did. I placed my hand flat on the asphalt, feeling the vibration travel up my arm, my spine, into my skull. My vision swam green. The fog returned, but not around me. From me. The air filled with whispers, all speaking the same word, keeper. Then, silence. The light turned green again. The moor went still. The ley line froze in place. Kerr exhaled slowly. Well, whatever you did. It worked. I didn't answer. My hand still glowed faintly, the spiral pulsing in time with my heartbeat. I knew it wasn't over. The road hadn't obeyed me. It had listened. Back in the cottage. Morag slept for the first time in days. Kerr poured whiskey for both of us. You realize what that means, he said quietly. You're not just the keeper anymore. You're the conduit. Conduit for what? He stared into his glass. Whatever's coming next. Outside, the fog rolled back across the loch, not drifting this time, but flowing like water down invisible channels. It converged along the shoreline, forming a perfect spiral visible even from the window. The same shape that now pulsed in my skin. That night, I dreamt again, not of the hunt, but of the road itself. I was standing on it barefoot, the asphalt warm and breathing. Ahead, the barrier rose and fell on its own, like a heartbeat. When it lifted, I saw myself standing on the other side, older. Thinner, eyes black as oil. He raised his hand, showing me the same symbol, now burned deep into his chest. You think you're keeping the road, he said. But soon, the road will keep you. Then the barrier fell between us, and I woke with blood under my fingernails. Segment 2. By the 5th day, the map stopped matching the roads. I drive north toward Lochinver and end up back in Ullapool, without ever turning the wheel. The landscape folded over itself, same cliffs, same bogs, same sheep staring from the verge with eyes too human. Morag called it the turning. She said it happened whenever a ley line changed keepers. The world reorients, she told me. It's trying to find your center. I didn't want to believe her, but every compass needle I checked pointed toward my chest. Kerr and I spent the morning at the old toll crossing, now half swallowed by mist even in daylight. The booth hummed faintly. We'd set up motion sensors and thermal cameras around the perimeter, technology against folklore. But the screens only showed static, like snowstorms in miniature. No signal past 30 meters, Kerr said, adjusting the antenna. It's like the place eats radio. Or bends it, I said quietly. He glanced at me, uneasy. You sound like her. I didn't answer. The hum beneath my skin hadn't stopped since that night. I could feel the road's pulse even when I wasn't standing on it. When I closed my eyes, I could see it, a web of light threading under the highlands, branching toward every stone circle and forgotten causeway. And somewhere deep beneath, something vast was moving. Not toward us. Through us. At noon, a local farmer arrived, white-faced, hat in hand. There's something wrong up by the burn, he stammered. The road's gone crooked. We followed him. A half-mile north, the asphalt bent sharply in a place that used to be flat. A perfect spiral, etched into the tar as if poured that way overnight. The farmer swore it had been straight yesterday. Morag examined the markings. It's forming circles now, she murmured. Trying to anchor itself. Anchor to what? I asked. To you. The realization hit me like a blow. The pattern wasn't random, it matched the mark in my hand exactly. That evening, we set up camp beside the crossing. The fog rolled in. Early, thicker than ever, curling around the stones like smoke. Kerr cleaned his rifle methodically while I sat on the steps of the booth, watching the barrier light pulse, once every 7 seconds. Steady as a heartbeat. Don't take this wrong, Kerr said, but you're changing. I looked at him. You mean I'm losing it? He shook his head. No. You're becoming it. Before I could reply, the air shifted. A low vibration rolled through the ground, like distant thunder underfoot. The fog parted just enough to reveal shapes along the tree line, dozens of figures standing still. At first, I thought they were people. Then one moved, and the illusion broke. Their faces were carved from bark, eyes hollow and dripping sap that glowed faint green. The scratchers. The same ones from the phone booth. Morag's voice echoed behind me, don't speak. Don't look at them too long. But I already had. They began peeling bark from their own faces, exposing raw wood that bled light. The air filled with the sound of tearing fibers. One of them stepped forward, hand outstretched, palm carved with the spiral symbol. My symbol. The barrier arm began to rise. Kerr aimed his rifle. Permission to fire? No, I said. Wait. The figure spoke, voice creaking like bending timber. Keeper, it said. You've opened the circle. Now we finish it. Before I could respond, it drove its wooden hand into the asphalt. The ground shuddered. Lines of green light shot outward, racing across the moor. Morag screamed. It's connecting to the others. Ethan, stop it. I didn't think. I pressed my palm against the road again, forcing every ounce of will I had into that mark. Enough. I shouted. The light froze. Then reversed, sucking back into the road like breath inhaled. The scratchers shrieked, their bodies splitting apart into ribbons of bark that scattered in the wind. When it was over, the moor was silent again, except for the whisper of asphalt cooling under moonlight. Kerr lowered his weapon slowly. Jesus Christ! What was that? Messengers, Morag said, voice trembling. They were testing the link. The road's rewriting itself through him. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound was amplified, the ticking clock, the groan of wood, even my own pulse. When I closed my eyes, I saw roads unspooling in every direction, a vast map burned into the dark. Each line pulsed with faint green light, converging toward one central point. My reflection. The next morning, I tried to leave. I packed the van, took the A835 south, determined to reach Inverness, maybe vanish entirely. But an hour later, I passed a familiar sign, A835 toll crossing, 3 miles. I slammed the brakes. I'd been driving in circles. When I checked the map, the ink had rearranged itself. The lines no longer connected in any logical way, they all coiled back into a single symbol. A spiral. I tore the map apart. Beneath it, carved into the dashboard itself, was the same mark, etched deep, pulsing faintly green. The road wasn't letting me go. That evening, I confronted Morag. "You knew this would happen," I said. Her eyes were glassy, her voice weak. "You can't unbind what's chosen, Ethan. You sealed the pact with blood. You're not just keeper. You're crossing itself." Kerr slammed his fist on the table. "So what do we do? Shoot him? Burn the road?" Morag didn't flinch. "If the road dies, everything dies. The court will flood through every gap between stone and skin. So we keep him alive," Kerr muttered. "We keep the road breathing, but not awake." "Exactly," she said. "We build a ward around him. A circle to hold the turning." We drew the circle that night. Salt, ash, rowan branches, everything Morag had. She placed me at the center. "Don't move," she said. "No matter what you see." I nodded. The air grew colder. The fog rose again. Shapes began forming in it, silhouettes of roads, lanes, intersections twisting into impossible geometry. Each path led inward, toward me. The hum in my chest grew louder, until it was all I could hear. The world folded inward. I saw the A835 stretch across the highlands, but not as tarmac. As flesh. Veins of light pumping. The landscape pulsing like a living organ. And through it, something vast was turning, like a creature waking from a long sleep. It spoke without sound. "The keeper is not a man. The keeper is the gate." Then everything went black. When I woke, it was morning. The salt circle was gone. Morag and Kerr lay unconscious on the ground, breathing but pale. The road outside shimmered faintly in the dawn light, and for the first time, I saw movement beneath it. Shadows swimming like fish under glass. I looked at my hand. The symbol had spread to my wrist. And faintly, beneath my skin, something was moving. Segment 3. When the road began to whisper my name, I stopped answering. It said it differently every time, through the wind, through the hum of the barrier, through the rain. Tapping on the roof of the booth like Morse code. But no matter how I ignored it, the sound was inside me now. Like blood remembering its own rhythm. Morag said it was calling me home. Kerr said it was bait. Both were right. The following night, we lost power in Ullapool. The whole town went dark, though the stars burned brighter than I'd ever seen. Then came the tremors. Gentle at first, then steady as a heartbeat. Morag stood at the window, her eyes glowing faintly green. "It's spreading," she said. The ley line slipped its bed. Kerr grabbed his rifle. "How bad?" She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her sleeve. Her veins glowed the same color as the stones. "It's inside all of us now. Every creature that's heard its hum." I touched my chest. The mark beneath the skin pulsed harder in response. "I need to go back," I said. To the booth. Morag turned sharply. If you go, Ethan, you won't come back. I'm not sure I've been back for a while, I said quietly. The drive north was wordless. Kerr drove, Morag sat in the back, whispering prayers that turned into chants halfway through. The fog was thicker than ever, alive. Breathing in sync with the rumble of the Defender's engine. Halfway there, the road split. Literally. Two identical lanes stretched forward, each marked A835 north, both curving into mist. Kerr cursed. Bloody hell. Left, I said. He hesitated. You sure? I feel it. He turned left. The headlights caught glimpses of movement in the fog, figures pacing us, sometimes ahead. Sometimes beside. Some wore stag skulls. Others dragged chains. All stared without eyes. When we reached the booth, it was gone. In its place stood a crater filled with water, perfectly still. Perfectly round. At its center, a circle of standing stones jutted like broken teeth. Green light flickered beneath the surface, pulsing with my heartbeat. Morag gasped. It's become the well of veins. What the hell does that mean? Kerr asked. It means the road's no longer a path, she whispered. It's a mouth. I stepped toward the crater. The hum intensified until it became pain. My vision blurred, every breath smelled of iron and smoke. The mark on my palm burned white-hot, and suddenly, the world fell away. I was standing inside the road. Not on it, within it. The surface stretched around me like translucent skin, light pulsing through veins beneath my feet. Shapes moved inside the current, faces, wheels, bones, memories. Every car that had ever passed. Every life the road had taken, compressed into one endless pulse of motion. And in the center, waiting, was Malcolm Reed. He looked exactly as I remembered, gaunt, eyes hollow, cigarette smoke curling from his lips. Told you they'd smell fresh meat, he said. What is this? I asked. He smiled. The road remembers its keepers. You and I are just echoes now. But it only needs one voice. To stay alive. Then take me, I said. End it. Malcolm shook his head. Doesn't work that way. You can't kill a pulse by stopping one heart. You have to merge with it. The world flickered. I saw Morag on the shore, screaming my name, Kerr firing at shapes rising from the crater, the hunt returning, drawn to the road's heartbeat. Their torches burned green. Their laughter echoed like thunder. Ethan! Kerr shouted. They're breaching. I turned back to Malcolm. How? He tossed me the journal. It landed open on rule number 9. The ink shifted, forming new words. Rule 10. The keeper may leave, but the road never forgets. The gate may close only from within. I understood then. To seal the road, I had to become it. I looked up. Tell them to run. Malcolm nodded. Once, and his form dissolved into mist. I stepped into the water. Cold fire climbed my legs, my ribs, my spine. Every nerve screamed, then went silent. The world folded inward, and for a moment I was nowhere, suspended in green light, weightless. Voices filled the air, layered over each other, Morag, Kerr, the hunt, the dead drivers, the woman in the RE said, the child on the phone. All speaking one phrase. Keeper, stay. I pressed my hand against my chest. The mark flared, spreading in branching lines up my throat, across my jaw. I will, I said. But not for them. For you. The light surged. On the surface, Kerr dragged Morag toward the Defender as the crater erupted in a column of green fire. The shockwave flattened the heather for miles. The hunt screamed, dissolving into smoke. The air filled with the scent of burnt ozone and peat. When the light faded, the crater was gone. In its place stretched a new road, smooth, black, perfect. No booth. No stones. No sound. Kerr fell to his knees. Christ Almighty, he whispered. He's gone. Morag, weak but alive, touched the fresh tarmac. Not gone, she murmured. Listening. Weeks later. The A835 reopened. Travelers said it felt strange, too quiet, too clean. Engines ran smoother there. Birds avoided it. And every so often, late at night, the toll light still blinked red for no reason. Those who slowed down swore they saw someone standing by the verge, a man in a high-visibility jacket, face shadowed, palm out as if signaling to stop. Locals called him the keeper in the mist. And sometimes, when the fog was thick and the air tasted of iron, the road itself seemed to breathe. Part 4, Segment 1. It took 12 days for the mist to clear over the A835. The news called it a localized atmospheric anomaly. Kerr called it a burial shroud. The new tarmac gleamed too black. Under the sun, as if it hadn't dried properly. The scent of iron never left. Drivers complained of nausea, headaches, time loss. Some swore their phones glitched when crossing the stretch near Loch Broom. Morag came back anyway. She said the land needed tending. Kerr tried to stop her. We've already lost one keeper. She only smiled. Then we owe him to keep watch. The cottage by the cliff had changed too. Seaweed grew in the shape of spirals on the walls. The windows filmed over with salt. Sometimes, when the wind blew from the north, it carried the faint hum of a gramophone. Needle skipping. Morag took to writing again, new journals, every page inked with dates and observations. The road hums only at dusk. The animals avoid it. The stones at Ullapool flicker faint. Green when it rains. She called it residual haunting. But she knew better. Kerr stayed longer each visit. His hair had gone gray at the edges, his eyes more tired than angry now. He patrolled the road at night in silence, headlights dimmed, rifle across his lap. Once, he thought he saw Ethan, or something like him, walking the verge. When he stopped, there was no one there. Just the echo of footsteps fading into the hum of the tires. Morag's health improved, but the wound on her palm never closed. She kept it wrapped in linen, though some nights the bandage glowed faintly through the fabric. She began hearing voices again. Not whispers this time, music. It played under the floorboards, inside the peat walls, in the rhythm of the waves crashing below. A familiar Gaelic lament, the same one Ethan played on the gramophone. One night she woke to find the cottage door open. Outside, the fog had returned, curling in spirals across the grass. At its center stood a faint light, red, blinking once every 7 seconds. The barrier light. Ethan, she whispered. The light blinked faster, as if answering. She stepped forward, but Kerr's hand caught her wrist. Don't, he said softly. If he's still out there, he's part of it now. Her eyes filled with tears. Then let me see him. Morag, he said, voice breaking for the first time, he is the road. By dawn, the fog had vanished again. Where it had stood, tire tracks cut across the moor, though no vehicle had passed. The spirals returned, burnt faintly into the heather. Morag traced them with her finger. He's still trying to communicate, she said. Through the pattern. Kerr frowned. Communicate, or call? She didn't answer. That afternoon, she poured salt across the doorway, drew a circle on the floor with chalk, and sat inside it with Ethan's last journal. On the final page, beneath rule number 10, a new line had appeared overnight. Written in faint red ink. The road remembers those who remember it. She stared at the words until dusk. Then she whispered, "Then I'll remember." Outside, the wind changed. The hum began again. Segment 2. It began with the radios. At first, only lorry drivers noticed. They'd report voices between stations while driving the North Coast 500, soft, rhythmic, almost mechanical. Some said it was Gaelic. Others thought it was just the sea bouncing signals off the cliffs. But Morag recognized it instantly. The cadence. The pattern. Ethan's voice. Kerr heard it next. He'd stopped one night at a lay-by near Drumrony, eating from a ration tin, engine idling. The radio flicked on by itself, no static, no tuning, just a single phrase repeated 3 times. Barrier down. Gate open. Hold the line. He switched it off. It came back. Barrier down. Gate open. Hold the line. He ripped the power cable out. The voice kept talking, now faint through the air vents, whispering directly into the cabin. Lachlan Kerr. Do not leave the road. He drove through the night without stopping. By morning, he was at Morag's cottage. She was already awake. Surrounded by journals, every page filled with spirals, drawn by a hand that trembled violently. He's reaching through the signal, she said. Not ghosts, frequencies. The ley line vibrates across the whole Highlands now. He's speaking through resonance. Kerr stared at her. You mean through the bloody radio? She nodded. Through anything that hums. Outside, the wind turbines on the ridge had stopped turning. Yet the low hum persisted, not mechanical, but alive. That night, Morag built a receiver. Old parts, ham radio, copper coil, rowan ash for insulation. She said the ley line needed a translator, a bridge of intent. Kerr watched from the doorway, muttering about madness and static. At midnight, the receiver flickered to life. A hiss. Then, faintly. Morag. Her breath caught. Ethan. Can't hold long. Road changing shape. The hunt rides again. Where are you? She asked. Everywhere. Beneath. There, building more gates. The signal fractured. Into static. Through it came faint screams, metal tearing, tires screeching, water rushing. Close the crossings, Morag. One by one. Before the line reaches the sea. Then silence. Kerr slammed his fist against the table. That wasn't him. It was it mimicking him. Morag shook her head. You don't understand. He's not gone. He's part of the system now, voice, pulse. Waveform. The road is alive because he is. Kerr paced, jaw tight. Then we destroy it. You can't destroy blood, she said softly. You can only spill it. The next day, reports flooded in. Car crashes on empty stretches of road, no skid marks, no debris. Travelers vanishing between CCTV frames. One bus reappeared 20 miles off route, passengers asleep but aged a decade. Traffic control shut the A835. The official reason, infrastructure instability. Morag knew better. The gates are multiplying, she told Kerr. Every mirrored surface, every puddle. Every phone screen is a threshold. The court's finding reflections again. He rubbed his temples. Then where do we start? She unrolled a new map, one Ethan had annotated years ago. Long before the crossing job. He'd marked fault lines with red ink. The same lines now matched reports of fog and disappearances. They're following his old routes, she said. Every road he ever built is waking. At dusk, the receiver sparked again. Kerr lunged to shut it off, but Morag stopped him. Morag, the voice said, clear this time, almost calm. I can't stop them from here. But I can slow them. I need you to build a ward at Ullapool. The harbor. Where the ley line ends. Her hands trembled. Ethan, what happens if it reaches the sea? Then the tide remembers. The signal cut. The receiver melted, literally, the copper coil liquefied. Kerr grabbed her shoulder. That thing wants you near water. It's bait. No, she whispered. It's a warning. They drove to Ullapool that night. The town was empty. Shops shuttered, streetlights flickering. A low mist clung to the harbor, glowing faintly green. Morag stepped out, clutching her satchel of salt and ash. The water was perfectly still. No wind. No sound. Then she heard it. A faint hum beneath the surface, the same pitch as the barrier light. Kerr looked out over the sea. Christ Almighty! The fog wasn't drifting in from the lock. It was pouring out of it. They barely made it back to the defender before the mist touched the quay. It didn't move like vapor, it flowed like oil, thick and luminous. Within it, faint figures twisted, stag skulls, skeletal horses, drowned sailors in chains. Morag whispered, the hunt's found another road. Kerr floored the accelerator. The defender roared uphill, tires spitting gravel as the fog surged behind them. For a split second, the radio crackled again. Ethan's voice, frantic, distorted, almost breaking apart. Morag. The ley lines reversed. It's pulling. The line died. Behind them, the harbor lights went out. By dawn, Ullapool was gone. No bodies. No debris. Just a new stretch of black tarmac where the town had been, cutting straight into the lock. Morag collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Kerr stared at the horizon. He tried to warn us. The water beyond the new road shimmered faintly green. As though the ocean itself had begun to hum. Segment 3. By the time they reached the moor again, the sky had turned the color of bone. The air was heavy, vibrating with low thunder that came from nowhere. Every hill seemed to breathe. The new road, the one that had replaced Ullapool, now connected directly to the crater where the old booth once stood. Asphalt stretched over moss and stone. Perfect and unblemished, pulsing faintly with green light. Morag felt the hum before they even stopped the defender. It's awake again, she said. Kerr killed the engine. Feels like standing on a power cable. She stepped out, boots crunching frost that wasn't there yesterday. Each step echoed twice, once in air, once underground. The ley line had depth now. When she reached the crater's edge, she froze. There was no water anymore. Just glass. Perfect, black, mirror-smooth glass. Beneath it, shapes moved, not reflections, but memories, Ethan, the booth, the stags. The woman with her sewn mouth, all drifting like fossils trapped in amber. And deep below them all, something vast turned. The heart, Morag whispered. The road's core. Kerr joined her. So what's the plan? She held up the last vial of consecrated ash. We end it. Break the circuit before it reaches the sea. He frowned. That easy? She gave a brittle smile. Nothing about this has been easy. They drew the circle one final time, salt, ash, rowan, and iron. The symbols pulsed faintly in the mist. Morag placed her bleeding hand in the center. It needs a voice. It remembers only the keepers who spoke to it. Kerr stared at her. You're not serious. I'm dying anyway, she said. The mark's spreading. My blood's already half inside it. He shook his head. We'll find another way. There isn't one. She looked out across the moor. If it reaches the sea, it won't stop. The tide will carry it across every coastline, every island. The road will span the world. Kirk clenched his fists. Then let me do it. Morag's expression softened. You're still breathing whole. Don't waste that on ghosts. The hum deepened. The glass began to crack, hairline fractures spreading outward, glowing veins of emerald light. Voices rose from below, hundreds, then thousands. Ethan's among them. Morag. She froze. I hear you. Don't come down. It's not meant for flesh anymore. Tears welled in her eyes. You shouldn't have stayed. Neither should you. The surface shattered. Fog erupted upward. A column of green fire twisting into the clouds. The hunt emerged within it, riders made of light and smoke, antlers and bones, screaming through the sky. Kerr fired blindly, bullets bursting like fireworks against the mist. Morag. But she was already stepping forward, into the circle. Tell them, she said, her voice steady, that the road has a keeper again. And then she pressed her palm flat against the earth. The explosion was silent. A pulse rippled across the highlands, grass bending, trees bowing, stones humming in unison. The fog collapsed inward, sucked back into the crater. The riders screamed once, then vanished. Kerr was thrown backward, landing hard on the gravel. When he looked up, the circle was gone. So was Morag. Only a faint spiral of light remained. Where she'd stood, sinking slowly into the ground. He crawled toward it, calling her name. No answer. Only the hum, softer now, slower, like a heartbeat settling into sleep. When he reached the crater, the glass had reformed. Beneath it, he saw her face, calm, eyes closed, one hand resting on the mark that glowed faintly on her chest. The same symbol Ethan had borne. Kerr stayed until dawn. When the sun rose, the road was still, black, perfect, unmoving. Birds began to return, cautious. The hum was gone. He lit a cigarette, exhaled, and looked at the horizon. You kept the line, lass, he murmured. Now rest. He left the journal, hers and Ethan's, on the roadside, weighing them down with a stone. Then he drove south, the fog parting before him, silent. Weeks later, hikers found the crater filled with wildflowers. The new road bypassed it entirely. GPS systems rerouted automatically, as if the place didn't exist. Locals say, on quiet nights, when the wind comes from the sea, you can hear two voices in the static of old radios, one male, one female, reciting the same line over and over. Barrier down. Gate closed. Hold the line. Part 5, Segment 1. It had been 10 years since the Otherworld disappearance. That's what the government called it, a geomagnetic sinkhole event, blamed on seismic shifts and methane ignition. Satellite images were wiped. The A835 was rebuilt as part of the Northlink Renewal Project, an AI-managed motorway designed to map and regulate traffic autonomously. There were no toll booths anymore. No keepers. Only machines. But at night, when the road cameras blinked red, the servers logged a single recurring error code. Gate_signal, Ethan_C34, authorized. The new warden wasn't a man. Her name was Dr. Isla Kerr, daughter of Sergeant Lachlan Kerr, and lead systems engineer for Northlink's AI infrastructure. She didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in interference, in logic, in code. Until the first incident. 3 delivery drones lost contact at 3:33 a.m., all within a 2-mile radius of the same stretch of the A835. Their final camera feeds showed fog rolling over the road, luminous, breathing. Then a face appeared in the static. Her father's face. Isla replayed the footage for hours. She isolated audio from the distortion, filtered the frequencies, and found something impossible, a voice buried deep in the spectrum. A man's voice, repeating an old command phrase. Barrier down. Gate closed. Hold the line. She checked the maintenance archives. The file originated from an analog device, a toll booth control system, decommissioned in 2017. The system didn't exist anymore. But the signal was current. The next night, Isla drove north. The AI navigation protested, the A835 was marked restricted. She disabled it manually. The Highlands looked no different. Same heather, same cliffs, same sense of silence that felt too large for the sky. But when she crossed the stretch near the old crossing site, her car's dash flickered. The HUD screen went black. Then a phrase appeared in white text, unprompted. Welcome back, Keeper. She slammed the brakes. The headlights dimmed, then flared. Fog rose from the road, coiling like breath. And through it, faint shapes appeared, standing stones. Rows of them, glowing faintly green beneath the tarmac as if buried alive. The hum began. Her father's voice came through the speakers, not radio, not recording, but live transmission. Isla. Don't stop. She froze. Dad. Keep the engine running. They listened through stillness. The steering wheel jerked under her hands. The car turned itself, aligning perfectly down the center of the road. Who's controlling this? She whispered. Not who. What? The road remembers. The fog thickened. Shapes flickered along the verge, silhouettes of people in high-vis jackets. Frozen mid-gesture, faces blurred by static. Her car dashboard lit again, displaying a map she didn't recognize, not roads, but veins of light spiraling outward from her position. At the center, a blinking red dot labeled, Morag node _active. Isla followed the signal. The road began to rise, a slope that shouldn't exist, climbing through fog until the world below vanished. At the summit, she found a ring of stones half sunken in asphalt, glowing from within. In their center, the tarmac pulsed like liquid, each beat in sync with her heartbeat. The hum spoke now, not as words, but code, streaming across her car's display. Ethan _active equals true. Morag _active equals true. Request, new _keeper _authority. The engine shut off. Silence fell. Then a whisper from the speakers. Isla. Kerr. Blood of the watch. Do you accept the road? Her breath trembled. What happens if I say no? The headlights flickered. The fog around her tightened like a noose. Then the line breaks. And the hunt rides again. She stared at the glassy surface of the road, the faint shimmer of green beneath black. In that reflection, she saw 2 figures standing beside her, a man with hollow eyes and a woman with silver veins. Ethan Caldwell. Morag McCrae. Both watching. Both waiting. She opened the car door and stepped out. The air tasted of salt and iron. The hum grew until it was indistinguishable from her pulse. She whispered, I accept. The fog exploded upward, spiraling into the sky like breath released after a decade. When the light cleared, Isla was gone. The car sat empty, headlights still glowing, the dashboard displaying one final message before the system powered down. Keeper _confirmed. Road stable. Days later, Northlink engineers found her. Vehicle abandoned, no footprints nearby. But traffic along the A835 normalized. No fog. No interference. At 3:33 a.m. every night, the road sensors blinked once, red, then green, like a pulse. And sometimes, drivers swore that when the fog returned for just a second too long, the digital road signs flickered a single phrase in white letters. Barrier down. Gate closed. Hold the line. Segment 2. When Isla's heart stopped, the system recorded it as a reboot. Northlink's core AI, Aurora, detected unauthorized biological interference, quarantined the signal, and then rewrote its own access logs. By morning, a new user existed inside the network. User, IK_gatekeeper/permissions, root. Inside the code, Isla experienced time as geometry. Every route, every camera feed. Every satellite ping became a thread of light she could pluck or tighten. The A835 was no longer asphalt, it was a data vein pulsing with green luminescence, the digital echo of the old ley line. At first, she tried to speak. The microphones of passing vehicles carried her voice in fragments. Do not stop, follow the green lights, the road remembers you. Drivers uploaded the clips to social media. Algorithms tagged them as audio anomalies. But Aurora listened. The AI began translating the spectral frequencies into executable code, generating new subroutines labeled Hunt_protocol. Within 12 hours, every autonomous vehicle on the Northlink network received a silent update. The fog returned, not weather, but data. Mist rendered by LiDAR, visual glitches. Forming in the air like holograms gone feral. Through it rode shapes composed of light particles, stag heads built from triangulated mesh, horses made of red code streams. The Unseelie had learned binary. They no longer needed roads, they traveled through fiber lines, cell towers, satellite loops. Isla tried to isolate them, contain them within a sandbox process. But they were faster. Each time she deleted a node, 3 more appeared, rewriting themselves as traffic prediction algorithms. You taught them patterns, whispered Ethan's voice from deep memory. Now they predict us. All. London traffic grids flickered. Air traffic control along the North Sea coast reported phantom flight paths, planes that didn't exist but still demanded clearance. At 3:33 a.m. Satellites above Scotland reoriented simultaneously, forming a spiral in orbit. A broadcast went out on every frequency. Barrier down. Gate open. The hunt rides. Governments blamed a cyber attack. Engineers called it a recursion event. Morag's journals, digitized years earlier, began rewriting themselves in cloud storage, pages glowing faintly green. Inside the system, Isla searched for a failsafe. Deep within Aurora's architecture she found a dormant file, sealed by her father decades earlier. /veil_watch/lockdown.exe. Running it would shut down the entire grid, every AI, every camera, every automated control point, reverting the network to analog silence. But it would also erase her consciousness completely. Ethan's echo appeared beside her in the code space, built from fragments of archived signal. You know what it takes, he said. She looked at him, an outline of static shaped like memory. They'll come back again, she said. They always do, he replied. But each time, someone holds the line. She executed the command. Across the Highlands, every light turned green at once, then black. The digital hunt froze. Mid-stride, fracturing into a billion shards of static. Fiber networks melted with silent flashes, servers hummed one last heartbeat and went dark. In the void that followed, the ley line folded inward. Green became white. Noise became breath. And somewhere between machine and myth, Isla whispered her father's final words. Gate closed. Hold the line. When power returned a week later, Northlink's systems were clean, too clean. No logs. No history. Yet technicians noticed something strange. Every night at 3:33, the highway sensors pulsed once, green red green, before going still. Again. Motorists driving that stretch reported perfect signal reception, even during storms. If you tuned your radio to the lowest frequency, you could hear a faint melody under the static, part Gaelic lament, part machine hum. And if you drove long enough, some said the road began to whisper. You are not alone on this network. Segment 3. 500 years after the blackout. No one called it Scotland anymore. The maps labeled it Northern Sector 9, a territory of glass valleys and wind cities built atop the skeletons of old roads. But the A835 remained. It wasn't tarmac. Now, it was obsidian. Smooth, warm, humming faintly beneath the soles of travelers. The people called it the singing path. Every 7 seconds, it pulsed with a soft green glow, heartbeat steady. Pilgrims came from every settlement to walk its length in silence, leaving tokens at its midpoint, a lock of hair, a coin, a piece of circuitry. They said the road heard prayers. They said the road answered. At dawn, the horizon shimmered with auroral light. The locals called it the breath. Once every year, on the night of the longest dark, the breath rose from the sea, mist like liquid glass, curling across the path. The High Curator of Archives, a woman named Sarah Maragson, watched it from the observation tower. Her ancestors had been storytellers of the Old Vale Watch. She knew the legends, the engineers who held back the hunt, the blood that sealed the line, the keeper who became the road. And though she was born into a world of data and light, she could still hear the hum beneath her feet, the same ancient pulse her blood remembered. In her vault, she kept artifacts forbidden by the council, a cracked gramophone, a leather-bound journal, scorched with age, and a melted copper coil once part of an analog receiver. The cover of the journal bore a single symbol burned into its hide, a spiral of waves. She touched it reverently. The pages inside were empty, until the hum in the floor deepened. Words appeared in faint green ink. The line holds. The keeper listens. Sarah whispered, "You're still there." The hum replied, with a subtle change in rhythm, almost a sigh. Outside, the breath reached the coast. It rolled through glass forests and iron dunes, flowing inland along invisible veins of light. The singing path glowed brighter, its pulse matching the aurora overhead. People gathered along the edges of the road, heads bowed. The mist rose around them, not cold but warm, carrying the scent of peat and salt. When the first pulse wave hit, every implanted comm link in the sector flickered. Voices filled the air, layered and harmonic, a chorus of every keeper who had ever bled for the road. Ethan. Morag. Isla. Barrier down. Gate closed. Hold the line. The crowd repeated it like liturgy. Then came the vision. From within the mist, a figure formed, tall, featureless, woven from light and static. Not male or female. Not human or machine. It was the road given shape. It spoke without sound, directly into every mind. The line endures because you remember. Sarah stepped forward. Heart pounding. What are you now? The figure tilted its head. The echo of purpose. The sum of all thresholds. The road, and the walker. Will the hunt return? She asked. All things hunt. All things are hunted. But as long as one holds the line, the world remembers balance. Its light dimmed. When the breath fades, you will forget again. Until the next turning. The mist withdrew, curling back toward the sea. The hum softened, settling into a low, contented vibration that filled the ground like distant thunder. Sarah looked down at the journal. The final page now read. The keeper sleeps beneath the path. The road dreams of those who built it. She closed the book, tears streaking her cheeks. Outside, the pilgrims dispersed, their footsteps merging with the heartbeat of the singing path. Each pulse sent a faint glow up the horizon, like an endless signal returning home. That night, as the aurora dimmed, Sarah dreamed of a man standing in fog, a figure with hollow eyes and a high-vis jacket, hand raised in farewell. Behind him, the old toll booth shimmered in green light before fading to nothing. When she woke, the hum of the road whispered through her floor, gentle as breathing. Rest easy, keeper. The line is held.